Well, welcome back to our course, Writing 242 Technical Communication. And we're continuing in this first element of communication where we're talking about the elements of technical communication. We talked about communication in the enterprise entrepreneurial workplace, profiling your readers. Last lecture, we talked about working in teams. And in this lecture, we're going to be talking about managing ethical challenges. How do we navigate through that area where at times it can be a difficult thing that we need to keep in mind. So here is what we'll learn in this chapter. We'll be learning how to define ethics in the technical workplace. What is the construct in which we would be doing that? And the three types of ethical systems would be personal, social, and conservation. And resolving ethical conflicts in technical workplaces is something that's going to be important that we'll do in all of those. So we want to protect your ideas and balance the many issues involved in an ethical dilemma. And we want to avoid problems with copyright law and technical documentations. So you're going to be in a situation where you could have proprietary information that could be another part of the scenario that you'll have to be dealing with. And you want to avoid and respond to cyberbullying and cyber harassment. We talked last time with teaming, and you could have some team members that are not co-located. And so we want to make sure everybody is respected in the team for them to stay in that performing mode. And now we're talking about ethical scenarios in multiple fronts where that comes up. So how do we define ethics in the technical workplace? We'll get into that here. Being ethical is about more than doing the right thing. It is also about good business. So for a discussion question, can you name some business situation where unethical decisions hurt a company or its customers? There are a variety of situations that you could be coming up with that unethical decisions could end up really impacting and the bottom line of what the company is trying to do. And so just keep that in mind, and we'll continue to be considering that as we move through the course. So here's a couple of definitions. First, for ethics. Ethics is a system of moral, social, or cultural values that govern the conduct of an individual community. So that is really important. An ethical dilemma is where a choice among two or more unsatisfactory courses of actions needs to be addressed. And so we can be thinking about those and having a code of ethics that you're comfortable with. And there's a lot of good resources. Christian ethics, I know, is a quite good resource. There's two books out there, one by Grudem and and another book by Geisler. Both of those have the same titles on Christian ethics. Where do ethics come from? So we will be consulting ethical systems, personal, social, conservation, and for what we have within our class and what we're trying to do in the Christian education is also to be using our understanding of Christian faith and how that helps us to give a good ethical, Christian ethical position. And so these intertwining ethical systems, they overlap. And if this is a Venn diagram, you can see that there is an overlap between these. So ethics come from a variety of sources that overlap. This figure helps us to visualize the overlaps between these ethical systems. So personal ethics, these are derived from your family, your culture, and your faith. And so this is something that your private world is informing you for how to be living a life appropriately. Social ethics, these are rights, justice, utility, and care, things that in society. And conservation ethics, these are values that protect and preserve the ecosystem in which we live. So these are examples of three. I was referring to yet another one that would be what we would be considering with our Christian faith, and the cultural context that we would have in our church communities. So there's four categories of social ethics. There's rights, civil and constitutional, things that are laid out in the law, justice, laws and corporate policies that are laid out in the judicial system that we live under, utility, what is the greatest good. That's a little bit more nuanced that we have to be thinking about in the situations we find. And finally, care, tolerance and compassion, how we can be helping those that may be in a more needy position and stuff like that. So which of these is true of utility? It protects human rights and involves fairness among equals. It suggests that tolerance and compassion takes precedence over rigid absolute rules. And D, it suggests that the interest of the majority should outweigh the interest of the few. And you could be thinking about that, even pausing the video if you like. But it suggests that the interest of the majority should outweigh the interest of the few. So that would be the paradigm that we would like to be thinking about here, at least in the context of what we're trying to address with this lecture. So conservation of ethics, your consideration of ethics should go beyond the impact of humans in their communities, thinking about the ecosystem, pollution, endangered species, things like that, how are we responsibly using the resources that we have around us. And so that's the area there that is trying to be addressed. So let's talk about resolving ethical dilemmas, resolving ethical conflicts in technical workplaces. We want to analyze the ethical dilemma. Ethical dilemmas usually force us to choose from uncomfortable alternatives. So the first step is to analyze the ethical dilemma. When confronting an ethical dilemma, consider the personal ethics, social ethics, and conservation ethics. How do these start to play in within this ethical dilemma? And here's a picture that could be showing how we would be thinking about that. We can also be thinking about our Christian ethics as well as another factor that we would be considering. So after we've done that, the next part is to make a decision. So we can be using the following questions to help resolve an ethical dilemma. Do any laws or rules govern my decisions? Do any corporate or professional codes of ethics offer guidance? Are there any historical records to learn from? What do my colleagues think of, and what would moral leaders do? So you may be in a situation where you have to make a decision on your own, or you may need to make a decision in a group. Since we're talking about technical communication, in one form or another, you may need to be conveying this information out beyond yourself. And so these are things that you can be using communication effectively to try and ensure that you're doing things in an ethical manner. So let's continue in this process. So step 3 is react appropriately when you disagree with your employer. What happens when you do have a disagreement with the company that you are working for? You can think about persuasion through cost and benefits. And so that would be one style of writing that you would be doing to try and be persuasive to your management. You could seek legal advice. And so you may have to work externally, maybe trying to come up with a religious exception if there was something like that, or whatever it might be. Mediation may be a process that you're would have to deal with, filing memos. And so you want to make sure that you accurately and write things up and communicate it in with the right genre that is going to be effective. Finally, there's whistleblowing places where you can be reporting if it totally comes to that, that's another possibility. Okay, so ethics in the entrepreneurial workplace. You want to protect your ideas and balance the many issues involved in an ethical dilemma. As you develop, you're going to be creating intellectual property. When you're working for a company, typically what happens is they have the copyright to that information that you made in the context of that company. You want to avoid problems with copyright law and technical communications. And so you need to make sure ethically that you don't divulge copyright information from your company in the way that you're communicating. So the entrepreneurial mindset means paying attention to what your company's competitors are doing and responding with new products. So you want to continue to stay competitive, but you also don't want to give away things that are not meant to be passed out inappropriately. You should also protect your ideas by understanding patents, copyright law, and trademarks. This is a way of how you can be protecting your intellectual property. So for copyright law and technical communication, copyrighted is an exclusive legal right to reproduce, publish, or sell literary, musical, or artistic work. Title 17 of the US Code allows you to duplicate for personal use, apply the fair use doctrine, and blogs and webcasting are protected. So these just are examples of things where we can be doing technical communication appropriately, and we want to be thinking about it. How is technology complicating copyright law? You can imagine this as you think about it, that technical communication with things online, it is just so easy to get things out. And once it's out, it's almost impossible to pull it back in through various things, whether it be social media or other ways of how things can get out. So to finish up with this last lecture in this first section, so you want to avoid copyright violations. So how we can do that is ask permission, copyrighting your work. And so that's important that you can do, and also avoid plagiarism. If you're writing, the last thing that you ever want to have happen, this would really be a bad thing that would happen if you have been accused and it has been demonstrated that you plagiarized. Even even though you need to make sure that you give the credit to the originator of that work, and so footnotes and all of that, and verifying that you have the right permission, that there's no violation of copyrights. All those things are important to make sure that you manage. Okay, well, that's going to complete what we will talk about for this first section as we're going through this process of getting into technical communication. All right, thank you very much.